alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Go to the church,
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, did you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk. The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
It's a very good morning, our viewers. You're most welcome to our show Tekachi. This is the Alternative Digitalk, streaming live on our Facebook pages, the Alternative Uganda, Digitalk TV, and later on our show is uploaded on our YouTube channel, the Alternative Uganda. You can always follow, like, comment, and don't forget to press that notification button so that you can always receive the information whenever we go live or whenever we put something up, so that you can keep yourself in the know and informed about what we do as the Alternative Digitalk. And we are doing our role to make sure that you keep sensitized, you keep in the know, and get to understand how different things run differently and at different times. I am Katoto Msime, hosting this show. And before I can introduce our guest of the day, has been a number of interesting cases, a number of interesting bills and laws that have been passed by Parliament, assented to by the President, and among others we have the law that is in regards to the donation of human organs. Those are interesting things that people must get to know. And then an interesting case about revision and visiting locus, what needs to be done, how it should be done, among so many things. And that specific case is one of Tumsime Rauben versus Chizegad. It's an interesting case about what should be done when visiting locus, especially when the magistrate leaves the chambers to go to the locus and see what's happening there. And it's something interesting that you should get to find out and read that case. It's an interesting one, and it can help you to guide the future of how you deal with your transactions. This morning, I am hosting Patrick Onyait. He's a lawyer and then the founder of Mindwatch Foundation. And today we shall not be talking about land issues, call them criminal, among others, but specifically we are looking at how estates of the people of unsound minds are administered. We have had instances where so many people are asking questions in that regard. And this is the interesting show that you must pick something in regards to that. And in case you face any challenge, you know how best you can approach it. Say hello to our viewers, Mr. Patrick.
All right. Thank you very much, the host. Good morning, viewers. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing the show.
Can you introduce yourself to the viewers?
Thank you. My name is Patrick Onyait. I am a lawyer and an advocate, and I am the founder and CEO of Mindwatch Foundation. Yes.
Thank you so much, Patrick, and you're most welcome to our show today. And like I introduced our topic, this is what we shall be discussing today. And so many interesting things when we talk about that. We have so many laws in that regard. We have so many principles that we need to know, that we need to find out when we talk about administration of estates of people of unsound mind. And we shall start with what do we mean when we say that somebody is of unsound mind, Mr. Patrick?
Yes, thank you very much. Now, we had previous laws before that were talking about mental health. However, when you look at our current laws, we have what we call the Mental Health Act of 2018. That is the law that has streamlined when anything in regards to mental health, mental illnesses, name it. Now, I want to make it clear that the law does not refer to them as people of unsound mind. That is referred to as derogatory nature. Okay. So we refer to them as people with mental health illnesses. So the Mental Health Act refers to them as people with a mental health illness. So the law goes ahead to define what a mental health illness is. Now, when you look at Section 2 of the Mental Health Act, it goes on to define a person with a mental illness. First of all, they have to be diagnosed by a doctor, and not just a doctor, but that person has to be a psychiatrist or a senior mental health practitioner. So the diagnosis, by the time you say that someone has a mental health illness, it has a doctor who is a psychiatrist or a professional senior mental health practitioner has to diagnose them and say that they have a mental health illness. Mental health illnesses can be depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, name it. So when someone has that particular illness and a doctor has diagnosed them, I'm talking about a psychiatrist or a senior medical health practitioner or a senior medical doctor, that is when we can say that someone has a mental health illness.
Counsel Patrick, for the interest of our viewers.
So abantu baffe abali eyo tumanya tutya mbu omuntu ayina obulwadde bw'omutwe, tetwanise obulwadde bw'omutwe mu lufuutifuuti. Etteeka otunuulira akawaayiro ak'okubiri mu tteeka erifuga obulwadde bw'oba embeera y'abantu ey'obwongo kye tuyita Mental Health Act of 2018. Akawaayiro ak'okubiri kavaayo ne kagezaako okulambula definition, okunnyonnyola omuntu kye twanise omuntu omulwadde w'omutwe abaani. Enjagalo bategeeza mbu etteeka litugamba mbu nga tetunnagamba mbu omuntu alina obulwadde bw'obwongo bwonna bwonna oba ekintu kyonna kyonna ekimusumbwa ku bwongo, alina okulaba omusawo, era omusawo oyo y'alina okudeclaringa mbu omuntu alina obulwadde bw'obwongo. Si buli musawo mbw'ogendagenda ku pharmacy oyogere n'omusawo akugambe mbw'olina ekirwadde ekyo. Etteeka likaatika bulungi ne ligamba mbu omuntu oyo, omusawo oyo alina okubeera psychiatrist, ekyo mu Luganda simanyi bakyogera naye omusawo w'obwongo ali professional, asomye era ayinza n'okubeera senior medical health practitioner, omuntu nga ebintu by'obwongo abibaddemu era nga mukugu mu byo. Omuntu oyo alina okulaba n'alaba omulwadde oyo, wamala omulaba then n'adetermining oba omuntu oyo mulwadde oba si mulwadde.
Webale nnyo Patrick. Ndowooza abalabi baffe ekyo bakitegedde bulungi. Naye ensonga lwaki musabye agezeeko kikakanya mu lulimi olwangungu atujje mu luzungu olukambwe ennyo. Kati Patrick, when we talk about such estates, abantu abamu sigamba nti bonna bazaalirwa nga balina ekirwadde ky'obwongo or mental illness. Some just get it at an older age when they're adults. And in instances, they have owned properties, yes. And when we talk about such estates, what do we include in the estates of such people?
Okay.
Generally.
Now, to understand what we mean by an estate, I'm going to first of all relate it to the estates that we know. Usually, for an older person or for people out there, they make wills.
Okay.
So, but however, when someone does not make a will, omuntu oyo nafa, when that person dies and they have not made a will, we say they have died intestate. because they did not have a will. So ebintu omugenzi byabalese omuntu yabafudde omugenzi byabalese wabalese ennyumba wabalese ettaka alese amamotoka alese biki, that is what we call the estate, the property in the estate omuntu byabalese. However, in this particular case, we are not talking about someone who has died. We are talking about an estate of someone who is still alive. But this person can no longer manage that particular estate. Mbu omuntu ono olwo embeera y'obulamu n'ekirwadde ky'alina takyasobola ku managinga byabugagga bye oba kulabirira bulungi byabugagga bye ebintu bye byaba alina, abadde ne business aba takyasobola kukola mirimu nga bwe yali agikola. So ebintu byaba alina, the property that person has, the businesses that person has, that is what we refer to as the person's estate. So some people have estates vary in size depending on someone. There are people who have large estates, huge chunks of land, many cars, many businesses, name it. So those are the people we are looking at, people that fall in that they have a mental health issue or a mental health illness, but they were prior before they were okay. Because if they were born not okay, if they were born with a mental health illness, then we would not expect them to have an estate per se, because then they would already be impaired.
Yes.
So we are looking at people that were fine but have now at this current time have a mental health illness, so they are unable to manage the property that they have already acquired.
Okay.
Yes.
Under the law that guides us while dealing with the administration of estates,
Yes.
of people of unsound mind, is the Administration of Estates of Persons of Unsound Mind Act. And it narrates so many instances and how we deal, how we have to go about when administering such estates. Kati ekisooka njagala tugende mpola mpola, omuntu bamaze omukebera nga bw'onyonnyodde omusawo the psychiatrist amaze omukebera n'atugamba nti ono omusajja oba ono omukyala he's taken to be a person with a mental illness and they cannot manage their estate so well. Kyekiddako nga tumaze okutegeera that process.
Now, I need to make it clear that the Persons of Unsound Mind Act and all that were all repealed.
They are repealed.
So all laws that were in regards to mental health before 2018 were repealed by the Mental Health Act of 2018. So
yes.
all other laws, including the Mental Treatment Act, Mental Health Treatment Act, and all of them were repealed. So now the current law governing any aspect of mental health, including the property of people with mental illnesses, is the Mental Health Act.
Yes.
Now, you say that what happens, you want me to take you through the process. Now, before we reach that process, there are situations where the person has been diagnosed with a mental health illness, but there are times where that person has lucid moments, where that person fully understands what they are doing at a particular time. You see, mental health illnesses do not mean that once someone has a mental illness, they cannot manage their property all the time. There are times where that person can have lucid moments where they understand fully what they are doing. Okay. Now, for such a particular person, they can decide to appoint, after them knowing that they have a mental health illness, they can decide to appoint someone to manage their estate or to manage their property. For example, if I have a mental health illness, for example, I'm bipolar, I have a bipolar disorder, but there are times where I understand what I'm doing fully. I can appoint you, Katoa, and say, my brother, I want you to manage my property. I am sick and I am unable to fully manage my estate.
Okay.
I would want you to manage my estate. So I, the person with a mental health illness, can appoint omuntu ayina ekirwadde ky'obwongo asobola okufuna omuntu gwagamba nayesiga omuntu oyo namugamba omanyi siri bulungi, so nsaba obeere nga gwatetenkanya ebintu byange byonna bye mbadde nkola, bizinesi zange, ettaka lyennyina, njagala obe nga gwe abimanaginga kati ebiseera ebisinga, especially wembeera nga siri bulungi, njagala obeere ng'omanaginga ebyobugagga byange bino byennyina. So that is one instance where a person has a mental health illness and they decide to appoint someone to manage their estate. However, the biggest in the law is where someone has a mental health illness and they are unable to appoint someone, yes, or they are unwilling to appoint someone. Someone has made a lot of money. Someone has vast a lot of property. Kati gwe omugamba saa zino mbu alina ekyamu ku mutwe, business zazikwasa omuntu omulala yaba aziddukanya. Musajja alowoozaamu ku ssente ziri ku account ate azikwasa omuntu omulala atamanyi gy'avudde byayiri bye. Some people don't take it lightly. But however, the law, the Mental Health Act is envisaged in a way that we are not doing it, we are not discharging, we are not adjourning this person to be with a mental health illness because we don't like the person.
Yes.
Tukikola kubanga tufaayo oli mulwadde era twagala kuyamba. Exactly.
Benefit.
For the best interest of that particular person. So when someone is sick and they're unwilling to appoint someone, what happens? I think that is where we are.
That's where we are.
Now, what happens is that person can have relatives that care about them. For example, if I am ill and I am unable to manage my property and my relatives, my spouse feel like they cannot let the estate go to waste because just because someone has a mental illness doesn't mean their estate should go to waste. Okay. So they have what they can do under the law. The law provides, when you look at from section 65 downwards of the Act, Mental Health Act goes ahead to give solutions or remedies that someone can do. One of them is they can apply to court. Basobola ogenda mu kooti abooluganda oba omuntu mulala yenna awulira nga ayagala okuyamba okumanaginga property nereke ekwonooneka ereke kusaanawo ereme kubbibwa. So that person can apply to court. The law does not prescribe. When you look at the Mental Health Act, abaloya abali eyo, when you look at the Mental Health Act, it does not prescribe the procedure that someone must take. But when you look at Section 98 of the Civil Procedure Act, when you look at Order 52, Kati, this is not for the ordinary people, but for now the lawyers out there. Because this show, I believe, handles every person out there. So for the lawyers out there, kubanga omuntu wa bulijjo nkusuubira okuba nga ojja kufuna munnamateeka ajja okuyamba mu bintu ebimu. Omuntu wa bulijjo ayinza obutajja sobola kwenganga bintu bino, procedure zino. But however, when you look at Order 52, it provides that if a procedure is not prescribed in the law, then you go by notice of motion. So, mnamateekawo ajja kozesa Order 52 of the Civil Procedure Rules ateekeyo application by notice of motion. So, tuba tusaba kikooti. Ali eyo yandibuuziza tuba tusaba kikooti. Ekisookera ddala omuntu oyo applyinze mu kooti oba mukazi wo oba muganda wo oba baana bo abakulu. They are asking court that first of all they adjudge you or they declare you a person with a mental health illness. That is the first prayer. The second prayer would be that court declares that person who has applied to be the administrator of your estate. Now, the courts are very critical before they declare someone to have a mental health illness. For the people out there, abandaba, I want you to know that court tegenda kuvaayo egambe mbu omuntu mulwadde wa mutwe oba yine kyamu ku mutwe oba kyone kino. You have to satisfy court. Olina okumatiza ekkooti mbu omuntu ono mulwadde. How do you satisfy court? The law, when you look at section 2 and when you look at the other sections, the law has been very clear that the only way you can satisfy court is by bringing evidence of that person's mental status. And who in the law can diagnose someone to have a mental health illness. That is, as we had earlier said in section 2, that is a psychiatrist or a professional senior mental health practitioner. So ng'obuli eyo ng'olina omuntu omulwadde ng'oyanyagadde omanaginga property ye, olina making sure mbu omuntu oyo mutuufu mulwadde, nga olina kye twandiyise affidavit oba obujulizi mu lufuutifuuti, obujulizi obuva ow'omusawo ali okujjanjaba oba eyawa diagnosis eyo omuntu ono ayina akatugambe bipolar disorder, the person is depressed. By the way, for people that don't know, even depression is an illness. You can qualify it as a disorder. So sometimes people get too depressed that they cannot leave their house to go and work.
Yes. So they cannot be making independent decisions.
They are too depressed. Aina business mu kikuubo takyasobola giddukanya. Yafiirwa mukazi we bamukyaye nga they are too depressed. So are you going to leave the shop in kikuubo to be wasted?
To waste, no.
or your son is out there, your son had land, your son had property, the property was in their names, ebyapa biri mu mannya ge, naye nga wetugamba mu Luganda, but yagudde eddalu, whatever reason that caused that, kati ettaka olireka aba broker ne balibba. So njogera ku bantu ba bulijjo abali eyo, oyina ebizibu ng'ebyo, etteeka lino era byenjogera biba bikukwatako, era oba eri eyo mu maaso eyo ngenda kubulira engeri gy'oyinza otutuukirira tukuyambe. Twogera such scenarios. You have your husband has developed bipolar disorder, your husband is too depressed, your husband has gotten any other mental illness. What do? You apply to court. Avuddeko mu futufu. Kyokka alina businesses okuddukanya.
N'ebintu bingi. Kati Patrick, you've talked about somebody who can understand that kati it seems I have a mental illness, I am not mentally okay. But there are people who don't accept that actually they are going through a mental illness problem.
Yes.
We have a number of them.
Yeah.
You look at them, their decisions, what they do, and you clearly see this person is mentally unwell. Tubaina. And some people cannot even, are not interested in even going through the medical personnel for such kind of treatment. Kati abo tuba kwasaganya tutya mu bintu. And for the best interest of their estates, not to be put to waste.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. And when you look at the law, most people are not willing to admit that they have a mental health illness, and they're not willing to give up. You see, when you're telling someone who has worked hard that I'm going to manage your estate, they'll be like, no, you're not going to do that. So the law has made sure that such scenarios are worked on. How? I told you that whether there are two scenarios where someone accepts, they appoint someone. Where someone does not accept and they're even contesting, you tell them that you want to go to court and they are contesting the fact that they have a mental health illness. So you apply to court, you the person that wants to administer the estate. You have to prove that it's in the best interest of that person. So you apply to court, noteka application ng'osaba court, era the first prayer or era kyebasooka okusaba court mbu court erangirire mbu omuntu ono ayina ekikyamu oba ayina ekirwadde ky'omutwe. So court, once you pray to court that person be declared to be a person with a mental illness, court kana bakuyita batya mu Luganda, court esobola okulagira, court eba eragira mbu omuntu oyo undergoing medical tests. Era naawe agenze mu court osobola okujja n'obujulizi obulaga. Obujulizi obwo nagambye buyina okuva mu basawo abwe banayogeddeko wammanga. Era omuntu oyo bw'oba tosobodde mukutwala mu basawo naye nga gwe olowooza w'osaba court eyina obuyinza obwo. Court yaweebwa amaanyi ago mu ssemateeka waffe no mu mateeka amalala mu court ejja kulagira mbu omuntu ono bamusubjecting to those tests. Yes. So once those tests are done, the law is very clear on who can do the tests. Psychiatrists ebutabika tulina bangi, n'emulago tulina aba senior mental health practitioners abasobola okulaba omuntu ono bamukebera bulungi era bakola report. Era mu bufuutifuuti bakola n'ekituyita affidavits. Ne bazitwala ku kooti, kati kooti wezitundwa mu bujulizi obwo neeraba mbu musawo ono yamukebedde bw'atyo, musawo mutuufu mu mateeka okukebera omuntu ono, tofuna musawo wa bisolo veterinary doctor ajja atulire omuntu ebintu by'obwongo. Ayinza okuba amanyiiko ekimu n'ekitono naye doctor oyo tofuna nansi mu kakiriniki keewammwe eyo. Nolowooza mbu kooti ejja kumatira ku bujulizi bw'oba okoze ki bw'oba oleese. Ate olina n'okulaga mbu omuntu ono bw'oyo omusawo akoze tests alina okulaga mbu omuntu ono talina busobozi bu managinga properties oba estate ye. Kulabirira ebintu byebyo. So ekyo kooti omala ogimatiza, kooti n'esiima nga ngambe court will declare that this person undergoes those tests in order to ascertain their mental status. So court will matira, then court will go ahead and then appoint someone. However, there are instances where court has refused to declare a particular person or you are applying. Negamba, but you're not a fit person to manage this estate. Nzo okuba oli ayina estate abadde mu Bank of Uganda ayina business bingi nnyo nga byetaaga omuntu amanyi accounting kyokka gwe yaga managing okoma mu P2 tomanyi wakudda tomanyi na kumanaginga business
omuntu ayina lo farm ye
you cannot manage this. So court
TV
tewabisoma tomanyi na kamera wefaanana oli mulimi
kitegeeza kooti naye esinziira ku
Yes.
property kizoyega
Zoina, what do you want to manage?
nabukugu bw'olina bw'olina.
Exactly. So
So they
court
can
with its
appoint
power can use that to appoint a suitable person.
Person.
Even when there is no suitable person, court ngeremeddwa okusangayo omuntu eyo. Tulina kye bayita public trustee. Court ejja kukwasa ebintu ebyo we public trustee. Nga olaba in these other estates, if there is no one, they can give the administrator general to manage that property. This particular case, the law prescribes that a public trustee can be appointed in case there is no any other suitable person.
Fit person to manage
Yes.
the estates. Thank
Exactly.
you so much, Pato. Now, njagala tugende ku step endala. Kati kooti katugambe maze kwasisinga omuntu and they find you fit to manage the estate of a person of unsound mind. Buyinza ki bw'olina ate bukomawa? Maanyi ki kooti geekuwa? Ate to what extent do you use that power? Ebintu obitwala ng'ebibyo, ebintu obikozesa by'oyagala, like how do you manage that estate in that period as a manager of such an estate?
Okay. Now, the law is very clear. Otunulia sections are of 16 okiri amasimu 50. Zija, those sections of the law go on hinting on the rights, first of all, of a person with mental illness, and then the duties, the functions of someone who has been appointed to be an administrator of that estate. Administrator kisokera ddala kyolina okumanya aba omuntu atulaba buyinza ki bw'ofuna nga kooti emaze ogamba mbu kwadde obuyinza oku administering a property eyo. First of all, you need to know that that property is not yours. Abantu abasinga bwe babeera ba-administrator balowooza mbu bafunye byabwerere, ettaka lifuuka lyabwe, ebyobugagga bifuuka byabwe. Si bwe kiri. You are just an administrator. You're just looking after this property. It does not mean that the property is yours. Secondly, mulimu gw'okumanaginga, kulabirira, kulaba nga tebyonooneka. Oyinza kisinzira so court. There are times, by the way, let me note this. There are times where a court can give specific duties. Negamba mbu in this regard, court ekuwadde obuyinza ku byettaka oba ku business eno, particularly si buli kimu eky'omulwadde. Naye neekuwa specific. Kati obuyinza businziira ku ki omuntu kyayina, byabugagga ki byayina, wabadde alina faamu, kitegeeza ogenda kumanaginga faamu eyo. Toyina kutunda mala gatunda for your own profit. Kyonna kyokola, it has to be in the best interest of the person. So if you're selling property, you have the authority to sell the property, but it has to be in the interest of the person. Si kutunda, then sente gwe nozeesigaliza. You have to look, if the person has dependents, they have children, you're a wife. So that money, that estate, as you manage the estate, it has to be for the benefit of the children, the dependent relatives, name it. Obuyinza bwina kisinzira ku muntu kibyayina bintu ntuwe bintu bingi kooti betuna nekuwa obuyinza obwo. Sometimes it's specific duties or general duties. Kooti bwekuwa obuyinza kisinzira.
Naye oyina wokoma negamba I cannot go beyond this point.
Yes, maybe what people need to know about in these other estates, when you're the administrator, you can also be registered on the certificate of title as the administrator. That is also the case in this particular case, because when you look at our laws, our land laws, you cannot sell unless you're the registered proprietor. Tosa transferring a title. So in this case, since you're not, if for example I'm mentally ill and it's my name Onyait Patrick on the title, a person I've appointed might not have the authority to transfer that land. They can sell, but they cannot effect a transfer. So that person has to first register, the person I've appointed has to first register their name on that certificate of title as an administrator of a person with a mental health illness. Then they can effect the transfer. Exactly.
Now, in other instances of administration of estates, especially where people have died intestate, there is a condition that the cost incurred by the person or the administrator in acquiring the letters of administration is not from his own pockets, but from the share of the estate that somebody owns. How is it dealt in the estates of people of unsound mind? Is it the same case, or there are different procedures that are taken? Who meets the cost of now going to court, filing notice of motion, affidavit, then you are now granted or ordered to be the administrator of such an estate? Who meets that cost in this?
You see, that's a good one. You see, when it comes to mental health, I want to believe that, and the spirit of the act was that we are doing this in the best interest of someone. So if you're a spouse and your spouse has a mental health illness, court does not say that it's a must that the costs have to come from the estate. They can also come from your own pocket, because you're doing this in the best interest of the person.
Okay.
So go ahead and put in your money, because you're doing it in the best interest of that person. We believe that you love the person and you want to do it for the best interest. But if you don't have the money, and the money is in the estate, then the money can be bought from the estate. They can be gotten from the estate. The money can be gotten from the estate.
Okay, that's so fine. And in other administration of estates, like I will keep on referring to the same, because it's all about administering an estate on behalf of the other, the beneficiary in this case. There is what we always call filing of inventories and giving good account of what you are managing as a person. How is it done in the administration of estates of people of unsound mind? Now,
the law provides that once you've been given that power as an administrator of that person, it doesn't mean that, as I had earlier said, it doesn't mean the property is yours.
Yes, it is not.
And at the end of the day, you are also accountable to court. Okay. It's court that gave you those powers.
Yes.
It is court that guided you and gave you, if they were specific, it's court that gave you those powers. So when you're given that power, in a matter of 6 months, you are supposed to file an inventory.
Okay. Give an account.
An account. An inventory mu futi abatulabe olulimi oluganda. Kooti wekuwa obuyinza obwo okumanaginga estate y'omuntu ono, tekitegeeza mu estate yo. Kooti ebekuwadde obuyinza obwo era mu myezi mukaaga olina okuddayo n'obuulira kooti mbu obuyinza bumwampa nabukozesa mu ngeri bwenti omuntu ono omulwadde yayina ettaka ebwebajja, yayina ettaka emasindi, ndimanaginze bwenti ne bwenti ne bwenti. Oba watundako olina okugamba kooti mbu natunda bwenti ne bwenti, n'obulya ne kooti bye watunda wabikozesa ki, kye tuyita inventory. Olaga kooti engeri gy'obadde ojja ng'omanaginga ebintu ebyakukwaswa, ebyakuweebwa, obimanaginga otya. Exactly. You file an inventory.
Now, the instances where we get stubborn and wiseacres who come and happen to be the administrators of such estates, and the 6 months lapse, they have not filed inventories. How does the law help now the person or the beneficiary of such an estate?
That's a good one. Now, the Act, in its nature, that's a loophole in the Act.
Okay.
The Act does not envisage a situation where someone has not filed that inventory. But when you look at, there are what we call practice guidelines. Now I'm talking to the lawyers out there. The what we call practice guidelines now. For the lawyers out there that go to family division, and the latest guidelines that are practice guidelines that are, especially in family matters, that are guiding us in family matters, when you don't file an inventory in the required time, you're supposed to seek court's leave to file an inventory out of time. Yes. So, woba tofainze inventory myezi mukaga kwatagana ne lawyer wo ajja kusaba kooti emweyo akadde akalala basobola okukola ki kufiling an inventory eyo kubanga obudde buba bayiseeko, you're out of time, the prescribed legal time. So you apply to court for leave so that you can file your inventory out of time. Yes.
But does it make it an offense if somebody has failed completely?
Yes.
Like I said, the stubborn people who want to use the advantage of the sick person or the dead person in administering their property.
It can amount to an offense with repercussions whereby a court can declare that you've mismanaged the estate, and it can take away your power or the authority given to you as an administrator. So when you don't file an inventory and you don't even seek court's leave to file out of time, court, someone out there can move court to declare that you're mismanaging the estate. And someone can, based on such grounds of lack of filing an inventory in time, that you're mismanaging the property, and apply to court that your powers as an administrator be removed, can be terminated, and get someone else.
Like a number of so many mental illness problems, or mental sickness, or unsound mind people, this is something that somebody may not go through for the rest of their entire life. I believe that some mental illness is treated and it can heal completely and somebody comes back to normal.
Yes.
What happens in instances where somebody now who has been adjudged to be mentally sick, he's now back to his normal, and maybe the medical examinations are done and the medical records show that this person is no longer mentally ill. They have no mental illness. But remember, we had appointed the manager, court had appointed the manager to manage his estates as an administrator. What is done in such instances?
Okay. That also, the law also does not, the Act of 2018 does not specifically talk about that. However, there are other laws that we follow. So we use order 52 of the Civil Procedure Rules, where that person who feels now they can manage their estate. Remember, we are managing when you go to court, you say that the particular person cannot manage the property at that particular time. Now, if this person says that they are now able to manage their property, they have to show, they apply to court, that court takes away the powers or terminates the powers that they had given to the other person who was appointed by court, and then allow you to remanage. Because remember, the other power is given by court.
Yes.
So it is court
to
that take away that
the power. Yeah.
So that person has to apply to the same court, that particular court, not any other court that gave that order, that grant. So you apply to that same court. So you attach evidence that you're now fine. The best evidence will be that ogenda call your musawo yagamba mbu you're sick, who gave the diagnosis. So go back to them.
Go back to them.
It's not a must that it has to be them, but it makes more sense when the doctor who said you're sick,
who examined and said that you are sick,
exactly,
now examines you and says now you
are not just fine, but you are able to now manage your
property.
Yes. So you move court through your notice of motion, attach all the relevant affidavits and evidence you need, and then tell court what you want. That now I'm fine, and the evidence is now I can manage my estate.
Be given back to me.
Exactly. So all the powers that were given to the other particular person, please take them away and give me back my power.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, I want to go through and see if you have some questions here.
Yes.
And now, Kenya, Brenda, thank you for watching. There is this one who says, thanks for the show. Help me ask Counsel the signs that prove that someone has good mental health. It's a little bit tricky, but
That's a little bit tricky, but you see, I want to make this clear that we all have issues as human beings. We all have issues, and at any one point, someone is going to feel depressed at one point, you're going to feel sad, you're going to feel not fine. That is because we are human beings. That is the nature of our system. Now, the question would be, when do you tell that you're not fine mentally or that you have a mental health issue? The way we define mental health is we take it that you are mentally fine, you are psychologically fine to do your everyday business. You wake up, for example, if you have a job, you wake up, do your work, you can handle your social life very well, your friends, you can handle your day-to-day daily life. So when you see a person shifting from their usual self, this person has been waking up in the morning, they're smiling, they go to work, they come back, they talk about their issues, and this person no longer goes out. For example, the actions they have are not the usual them. Counsel has never fought. You see Counsel fighting on the streets with people. And he's acting in a way that is not usual. If someone has been happy, the person is no longer happy, they no longer go out, they stay in bed. So what am I saying? The signs can be many. But those are not definitive signs to say that this person has a mental health illness or disorder. But whenever you see someone shift from their usual, byobadde omanyiridde okulaba ng'akyusizza sitakyali oli omuntu, essanyu lye yali alina terikyaliwo, you start asking what could be the problem. That is the point where you bring in professionals now. You can tell them, why don't we see this counselor, this therapist, this person, so that this person, when they talk to these professionals, a professional can tell that, I think this person is undergoing depression.
Okay.
I think this person is bipolar. Omuntu wa bulijjo, it might be tricky. Because at every one point, I believe you're also sad at one point.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you're depressed or something. There's a time where your work is stressing you for a whole week. That doesn't mean you're mentally ill or have a mental health disorder or you're depressed. You're just going through a phase. But when that has been continuous, and then the things that are not usual going on, that is when we say seek medical help or speak to a professional. It's only professionals that can really tell when there is something really wrong. For you can suspect, but when you suspect, try and forward the issue, refer that person to a professional to really help.
So that means that when even you can be able to tell that somebody is not doing well, it shouldn't be a conclusive reason to say that this person maybe is mentally ill.
No.
Until a medical doctor has brought a clear record and an examination has been made to say that this person is mentally not okay.
Exactly.
That's when we can give a conclusive
yes, diagnosis that
somebody
is
not mentally okay.
Exactly.
Now, we've looked at instances where the manager or the administrator is appointed, and there are instances where we find that in the relatives that are available, or the friends or the family of the person who is of unsound mind are not fit to manage the estate. Or we cannot ascertain any of the relatives, the friends, to manage his or her estate. What is done in such instances? Does that estate be left to put to waste? Or are there any other remedies available in such circumstances?
Now, I'll give the example of how estates of people that die intestate are managed. If there is no fit administrator, sometimes that property is vested in the hands of the Administrator General to manage that property, because government does not want property or assets to go to waste, and no one would want an estate of their loved one to go to waste. So in this particular case, when it comes to mental health, a person with a mental health illness, and there is no suitable person, you see, that is hard, but it's possible.
It is possible.
It is very possible, because I want to believe a person has elder children, a spouse, relatives, and all that. But there are times where there's no suitable person. They might be there, but they're not even suitable.
Not even interested in
Never even interested. Then court, as I said, can appoint what we call a public trustee to manage that estate. And that person will have directions or authority from court, and court will give specific areas in which that person is supposed to administer that estate. If it's land or what, court might be specific in those particular areas. Yes.
Okay. Now that has been clear. And I want to bring this tricky one. I don't know if it is covered under the law or if you have met it somewhere in practice, and maybe you can advise the viewers out there and maybe they can see how to do. We have relatives, we have friends, we have colleagues who are working abroad, not in Uganda. And they own estates maybe in Uganda, partly in Uganda. And maybe in what they do, the phone calls we make, we suspect that they may be going under something that we can term as mental illness. How is their property managed, especially when they are not in Uganda? Is it handled by the law? Is it by practice? Have you met it somewhere? How can we help such persons so that their property is not put to waste?
That's a good one. Now, the Mental Health Act has envisaged that area. And I think it's section 70 something that talks about it. Now, but before we get there to how the Mental Health Act looks at it, we have not yet fully tested the Mental Health Act of 2018.
Yes, that's
so
true.
Some of the aspects that we are talking about, the law has not yet been fully tested. We only have one case, High Court case, forgetting the title, the name of the case, that has tested the Mental Health Act of 2018. Now, that means that we have not had practical scenarios in the courts of law to determine how the court, you see, we, as you well know, we lawyers look at what we call case precedents.
Yes.
So to judge how did this court handle this particular matter. We have not yet tested that area, specific area in the law. However, the Act provides that if there is property in Uganda that property, even if someone is in Saudi Arabia, the law in Saudi Arabia cannot be used to manage property in Uganda.
Yes.
So if the person is in Saudi Arabia, mukuba cheyo atabukidde ebintu bitabuse, but the property is in Uganda and you don't want the property to go to West, you still apply to court. You tell court, I don't have authority over this property. This property belongs to my relative or a friend, but the person has a mental health issue, or we suspect they have a mental health issue, and would love to manage that property. So if there are ways you can prove that that person has a mental health illness, well and good. If you can satisfy court that that person has a mental health illness, you're doing it for the best interest of that person. And probably if you don't do it, that property is going to go to West, then court can still give you the order to administer. It can appoint an administrator of that estate. In regard, but it can put conditions in order to make sure that you do not overuse your powers
as the administrator.
Thank
you so much, and I hope our viewers are following. This is Tekachi always here every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to midday. And we bring different people to talk about different things as they happen and unfold, especially matters relating to the law, matters relating to order, to justice, in that kind of category. And we always receive questions that we are able to answer and guide where we can. And where we can't, just refer somewhere else. And today we are having Patrick taking us through how we can administer estates of people that are of unsound mind or that have a mental illness. Now, Patrick, the next one, I think, as time, I see time is not on our side, but I will take you this side, and I also advise the viewers there. We have instances where the administrators incur costs while administering the property. Some of the administrators are given allowances, some of them are given a small pay in the transaction they enter into on behalf of the beneficiaries or the owner of the property. How is it dealt under the administration of estates of people that have mental illness?
No.
Do the administrators have an opportunity to have a pay maybe out of the work they're doing? Do they get allowances under the laws? How is it managed? Or you just do it for the sake of doing it and end it up there?
That's a good one.
Because we are looking at the economic side of it as well. Somebody is investing his time, investing his money, investing his knowledge and skills to administer your property. Are there any pay benefits at the end of it all?
Now, to answer that, I would want to give the analogy of any other business.
Yes.
If you're managing business, you incur costs of something. You incur so many things. What is key to note is that these expenses, these expenses and these are in costs that you're going to incur have to come from somewhere. Now, what happens is, as a manager, you need to manage the estate in a good way, first of all.
Okay.
Managing the estate in a good way means that if money is required to do something, you're going to have to incur that cost. Okay. So if the costs can be borne from the estate, then that is it. You get the money from the estate.
You get your
Do you get an allowance? Because if you manage, for example, a company,
yes,
you're going to incur transport costs maybe to go, for example, if it's a farm also, you're going to incur costs. So those costs can come from the estate itself, because it's a business that has to continue running. Because even if you're the boss, let's say the person with the mental illness didn't have the mental illness, they would spend on themselves.
They would have spent.
So as long as the way you spend your money is in the best interest of the estate and the person with the mental health illness, you don't say that, you don't outrageously give yourself allowances that you moved from here to Masaka with 2 million. Your fuel was 2 million.
It must be reasonable.
That must be reasonable. Yet you're driving a Sienta. Get it? So it has to be in a way that you're managing the property. It is the best interest of the person with the mental illness and then the dependents therein.
Yes.
For example, if the person with mental has children, do not look after your children first before you look after their children. It has to be reasonable. It has to be in the best interest of that person.
Okay.
So if it means money coming from it, let it come, but let it be reasonable. Don't spend it because it's not your money.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think this would be the last one. Do the maybe the beneficiaries of such estates have a right if they feel Patrick, that was given the powers to administer the estate of the person with a mental illness, is misbehaving or misusing it,
Yes.
or not putting it to proper use? Do they have a right or a remedy of, applying to court to have you removed from administering such an estate?
Yes, they do. If they feel I'm managing or misusing the estate, they definitely can move court. They apply to court that I be removed as a manager. But it's not just about applying. You have to bring evidence. You have to satisfy certain things that this person is mismanaging. Someone might be there and then they go to court and then they tell court I'm mismanaging because I didn't give them money, pocket money. You get it, own money to do something. Why didn't give them a loan from the estate? Then they say Nyaku estate. So you have to bring evidence to show this person is mismanaging the estate. Maybe what is not to, let me use this point to note this, and to the people out there watching. We have had for a long time estates of people that have died. It's from our administrator. But I want to make it clear, and I want Digitalk to be the first. I want to use Digitalk as a platform to mention this. Okay. In the coming years, we are not going to only be handling estates of people that have died intested, but estates of people with mental health illnesses. That is going to be the biggest issue that we're going to have, because mental health is something very fundamental and very many people are going through a lot.
It is on the rise now.
And it is on the rise. So before you know it, you're going to see so many cases where we are administering estates of people with mental health illnesses. Let it be noted today. Okay. In the few years to come, and lawyers out there, prepare. That is what we are going to be working on.
As well.
But why invisible?
Innocent Iniviona, thank you for watching. He's in Barra and he's following the show. Okay. And Patrick, in about 3 or 10 minutes, I will give you a chance to say the final words, and maybe the take-home points for the viewers out there.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you to Digitalk. I want to say thank you to the host. This is an amazing opportunity, and the work you're doing is so great. We need more people like this, because the awareness that we're spreading out there is the awareness that people need today. Now, to the viewers out there, you want to administer the estate of a loved one who has a mental health illness. There are lawyers out there. I don't want to say there are very many. We are very few that can do that work. So reach out to organizations like Mindwatch Foundation that can do that for you. We deal with mental health advocacy and awareness. So we handle everything mental health related. You want to administer an estate, come to us. We can help you. Do not suffer in silence. Do not deal with your loved one in silence. Reach out to us. We shall guide you on what to do, so that that property does not go to waste. We have counselors, we have therapists, we have psychiatrists that can help. So reach out. You don't need to suffer in silence. Okay. And mental health is a priority. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Patrick. I think I got something here, and it is in regards, before we can close this show, it's in regards to instances where maybe somebody is abroad. I think it is in that regard. And maybe you can't access them to be taken to the medical examination here in Uganda. And how can such be handled?
And they're outside countries, eh?
Yes, they're abroad. Maybe in Saudi Arabia there.
See, that is a little complicated, because before court can grant you such powers, then, especially if you're basing on the Mental Health Act of 2018, that is very limited. You need to have a way of proving that this person has a mental health illness, or else you proceed under a different law. And to manage such property.
There is an aspect of consent from the sick person.
Yes.
Especially when you are to talk about their treatment and examination.
Yes.
How is that dealt with?
Consent now, you see.
Because somebody is now mentally unwell, they have a mental illness. Now, what, is that consent even reasonable?
Now, that is why at first I said that when someone has consent, when we're saying consent, it means someone is of sound mind at that particular time and they can consent.
Yes.
Someone cannot consent when they're not of sound mind, or at that time they're not lucid. So when someone is of sound mind, they understand what they're doing, they can appoint someone to administer their property. If they are unable to consent, they are not well, that is when we move to court. So I hope the answer of consent is answered. If someone cannot consent, go to court. Let court decide.
But should we say that's a loophole in the law as well? Because even for the mental health treatment, somebody must consent to the treatment itself.
When it comes to
Must not
treatment,
be subjected forcefully to be
yes,
treated.
if someone can consent to treatment, the law is very clear. Consent has to be there. But there are scenarios where someone, for example, someone with schizophrenia, and they're not of sound mind at that particular point, they're not lucid, but they need the medicine.
Okay.
So there are scenarios in the Mental Health Act where that medicine can be administered to that person, even if they don't have their consent, because they cannot consent. But if a relative is there, a mature person of age who can consent on their behalf, then they can consent on their behalf, because it's in the best interest of that person. And if that relative is not there, or another mature person who can consent, the doctors at that particular point, they can weigh the situation and see that whatever they do is in the best interest of each other, and that medicine can be administered. The law is very clear on what can happen in which particular scenario.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patrick, and we are so grateful that you have honored our invitation to come and share the knowledge to the viewers out there. The viewers that have been following us, thank you for always watching us. We are the Alternative Digitalk. We stream live the Alternative Uganda Facebook pages, Alternative Digitalk, it's Digitalk TV, and then later on our shows are uploaded on our YouTube channels, the Alternative Uganda. You can follow us on those media platforms. On Twitter, the Alternative Uga, we are always there. The personal handles to Msime Kato, Facebook and Twitter, you can find me, ask me, hit my DM for any concerns or questions. I'll be there to respond. Patrick, your social media handles, as we call it that day.
My social media handles on Twitter, just search for Onyait Patrick. The names will come. The same with all social media platforms. For MindWatch Foundation, just type in MindWatch Foundation on Twitter, on Instagram. Send us a DM. We shall reach out. Thank you so much. The people that I've worked with today, thank you so much. You have been great to pull this show out. See you next Tuesday, and I should say God bless you, and have yourselves a lovely afternoon. Have yourselves a good week. And if you have no any other alternative to make, or any other option to make, at least make your mental health the #1 issue. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.